Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. I'm your host, Steve Piros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today, super excited. I got Caleb Johnson on the show. Caleb is he's a rising star in the space, and he's covered a lot of ground in a relatively short period of time. So definitely excited to have him on. He's a managing partner at Red Sea Capital. He's also the host of a podcast too. So that's always fun whenever we have fellow hosts of the show. They know the stress and the joy of being interviewing other people, especially in the real estate space. So Caleb is definitely, like I said, skyrocketed to success at a relatively young age. Within 12 months, you guys had a number of deals under contract. You've already scaled up to multifamily after starting out with small multi, I know. And then obviously you launched your own with Red Sea Capital here in 2022. So definitely excited to have you on the show and hear a little bit about your journey. Caleb, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. I am just as excited to be here.
Right on. Well, for those of our audience that may not be familiar with you and kind of your progress or, heard you on other shows or, fill us in a little bit about your background, how you got started in real estate. Did you come from, real estate empire parents and, hey, they just handed you the keys to the entire portfolio or, how did you get started?
That was definitely not for me. My parents were kind of the complete opposite. They just had jobs. And so I saw the life that they had, and I knew I didn't want that for myself. Just the stresses that come with that, and also how uncertain that having a job is. And, I think a lot of people will say, people that have jobs, just the security that a job provides. And I'd say it's actually the complete opposite, that I know people that have worked for large Fortune 500 companies and they get fired like that. And they are just bringing someone else on that can do the same job and they can pay them less money after 30 years of being there. And so it definitely happens. I'm not saying that all jobs are bad or any job is bad. I think we definitely need the workforce. But the way that really got exacerbated for me, and when I took the plunge into investing, was when my mom had surgery and she was forced to be out of work for about 3 months. And during that time, she was going to live off of her nest egg and recover and heal up. And so the 3 months went by, but she hadn't healed properly to where she could go back to work comfortably. And so she was stuck between this rock and a hard place, Steve, where she could go back to work and get income coming in, but she would go through all this pain of emotional and physical to have to work after the surgery. Or she could stay home, recover, but prolong retirement by years because, again, she's dipping into her nest egg. So she decided to go back to work, and I would just see her come home crying because she was in literally so much pain. And that struck a chord with me, and I really wanted to help her retire early, help her along that path. And also, I didn't want that for myself. I didn't want to be 6 years old, something unforeseen happen that no one can predict what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in 40 or 30 years. And so I wanted to be prepared. And so that's why I got started in investing. Started with residential apartments, like you mentioned, smaller 2 to 4 units, and then scaled up to apartments today.
Wow, that's awesome. And what a compelling story too. I mean, I think for all of us, we've had some kind of milestone along the way that, that kind of pushed us and was significant in our lives. So that was obviously very compelling for you. And I think too many times people get stuck in that trap. You mentioned, working W-2. Obviously, everybody, we're created to work, right? Like I'm a faith-based guy, and I know that you are too. And I thoroughly believe that. We're all gifted with skills and talents, and we're created to do something with them here. But too often, we get lulled into that trap of having that W-2, right? Like the people get lulled into the safety of, well, I get a job, and it's like, okay, that's cool. But now more than ever before, I feel like that puts people in such a precarious spot. I mean, we've got AI coming on the scene now, that's taking away a lot of jobs. My mom worked for the state, of Texas, years ago. And so, she had a pension, but I mean, fewer and fewer people can rely on that now. I mean, pensions are underfunded or just non-existent. You have to kind of go out and create your own retirement. So relying on that W-2 to make, ends meet, let alone also plan for retirement is such a challenge these days. All the money printing. I mean, you and I, I'm sure you follow, the macro perspective for economics, inflation and all that. I mean, just so rampant today. Being beholden to a W-2 job is such a precarious spot. People need to seed plan, right? So powerful that you saw that early on, and in a way that was very, very close to home. There with your mom. I mean, that would change. I feel like that would change anybody's perspective. So, great that you took that, you saw that, you recognized it, and said, okay, hey, I need to do something different here. So
I'm with you, man. Yeah, it's definitely we got to start taking action sooner rather than later, and start planning for that now. Even if you're 40 years old, start investing in something, preferably real estate, because you and I are obviously in real estate for a reason compared to the stock market. But start sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think too, that's a great actually picture there, that what you gave to with you and your mom. You're on the, younger end of the spectrum, right? And I get that from a lot of people. And I know, I wish I would have had that perspective to think long term when I was, my early 20s or late teens. It's like, well, look, it's never too early to get started in investing, for one. And also, two, you mentioned, hey, it doesn't matter if you're, 40, 50, 60 years old, whatever. It's never too late too, right? Because you can always start planting seeds, for generations to come, for yourself. Hey, we're living longer than ever before today. So, you never know. And that's one of those things you got to prioritize, actually getting seed into the ground so that you will have a harvest later. And so, people have to start now. You have to start now. Well, awesome. Well, how did you, now I know you started in residential. How was that transition for you? I feel like as much networking as I've done over the years, I've been part of, residential investing masterminds. And then, of course, being in the commercial space. For me, I find for most people, it's usually like this really big mental gap between making that transition from residential to commercial. I've talked to investors who have, I've got 50 single family, rentals. But I can't do commercial. I can't do, apartment investing, like you guys. And it's like, dude, you're doing so much more work managing 50 single families, than we would doing a 50 unit complex, let's say. And obviously the debt and, management, all that kind of stuff is different, but that's a lot of work, So how was that transition for you?
Yeah, I was of the same ilk where I wanted to do residential, and then I would gain as much experience in that. And then I thought that could translate over to commercial. And as you know, that's not the case. Two completely different animals. And today that's actually something that we focus on, is kind of helping bridge the gap to help investors that focus on residential invest in apartments. And, we do that through education, like a webinar that we're hosting. And so for me, it was, once I learned that I just needed to start, because there's no point in waiting, right? Because again, you can't transfer all of that knowledge to commercial. I just went head first. And so I feel like it always takes people around 6 months to really kind of understand. Maybe 3 to 6 months, you can really inundate yourself with podcasts. There's tons of free resource on there, which is awesome, like your show, Steve. And just to help people learn what commercial real estate is, right? What does LP and GP mean? And the debt, how does all that work? And one thing I actually love about real estate is that it's always changing, right? Debt terms change. They come out with different programs. All this stuff, market changes. So you really have to be a professional at what you do to really be good at it and give the investors their returns.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's always a priority for us. I mean, of course, anytime, you guys raise just like we do. And that's like an absolute top priority for us is, preservation of capital. Of course, we're seeking alpha, but whenever you're taking somebody else's money and putting it into a deal and helping them, build wealth. I mean, we take that seriously, right? So that's definitely something that we prioritize. And you're right, though. We're talking about the different forms of real estate investing. Like I said, I can't tell you how many investors that I've spoken with, right, that do have, let's say, experience in some capacity, whether it be through residential, through flipping, through wholesaling, short-term rental. I mean, we do short-term rentals, long-term rental. I mean, you name it. There's a million and one different ways to make money in real estate, which is awesome. But it can also be confusing. It can be overwhelming for people that are just kind of starting out. So there is that steep learning curve, of course, especially when you make that transition where it's like, okay, well, I understand, this flipping thing, let's say for residential. Okay, well, how does that, come and help, you have to help them bridge that gap mentally where it's like, well, it's similar, but, of course, the mechanics of it are different, the debt's different, operations and all that kind of stuff. But, you got to help, like I said, mentally help them, I think, bridge that gap.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah. And I know you mentioned, you have a podcast show as well. Tell us a little bit about that too. How's that experience been for you? Is it also specifically real estate? Or you kind of what do you guys cover topic wise for your show?
Yeah, the show is called From Trial to Triumph, and it's not real estate specific, but I have had some great guests on there in the real estate space, like David Lindahl, Rod Khleif, Brian Burke, Neil Bawa. And so we do talk a lot about real estate, and at the same time, we also talk about personal development. Um, I've had people on the show that have come over tremendous trials, like being addicted to meth 20 years ago, and now they're a KP that has a $50 million net worth or whatever that looks like. People that are blind and they run ultra marathons, they're blind and deaf, and they do that, and it's just inspiring and hearing stories from what they've learned and how they've overcome those trials. I think is it's changed my life just to start off at a very young age and shape me into the man I am today. And I love having conversations like that, like having conversations with high level people like you, Steve, and just really learning and learning myself and developing what I know and always expanding.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like I said, I think that's part of the joy of even being a host, because it's like, well, we're trying to deliver value for, of course, the listener, but you can't help but to benefit from it too. Even these conversations like this, even if they're business, they can go every which way, right? And there's always a story behind the mechanics, right? We can get lost into the mechanics of the deal, the minutia, deal structure and all that kind of stuff, but there's always a why. There's always there's always some kind of additional motivation. There's always a person behind the numbers, and so. No, that's awesome. That I could imagine too. Like if you're doing stuff other than real estate and you haven't guessed, that's very compelling. I've heard some amazing stories over the years. So yeah, make sure that you're checking out his podcast, Trial to Triumph. So that's give it a listen for some other stories.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, kind of throughout all of this, like how for me, like mindset has been massive. Kind of throughout my investing journey and just life in general, right? Because we're talking about life experiences. How has that kind of played into you? How important has mindset been to you kind of over the years? And now that you've kind of made those transitions and you've developed, successful business?
Mindset's one of the most important things. And that when I was actually younger in high school, I had some of the lowest self-esteem and no belief in myself. I remember I tell people often, I went to a big school, 3,500 students, and I would walk probably a half mile out of my way just to avoid people. I didn't want to walk near people. I wanted to be away from as many people as I could. And that all changed about 3.5 years of going through that and just feeling crummy every day, just really getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think once people make that decision, and I've had really great conversations with really very successful people, and they say the same thing. Whenever you hit rock bottom and you say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, I don't care what it's going to take, I'm done. And that mindset shift, I know in my life, God used that to open up my mind, and really I was more receptive to inspiration and actually starting to believe in myself. have a self-confidence in my abilities, my God-given abilities. And that, I'll tell you, brother, that has changed and just morphed and grown over the years. And if you don't have a solid mindset, I don't think you can be successful.
Yeah, no, and then what a huge testament to also to like that, like the power of challenge and change and having that positive mindset to go from. And thank you for being vulnerable, by the way. Thank you for sharing that, because I know a lot of people. It's like, well, look, all you see is, man, you've got hundreds of units as a professional syndicator, and he's a young guy and he's super successful. But again, everybody's got a story. Everybody has started from somewhere else, right? And you don't. It's a rarity when people, for one, are willing to share that. But two, we have to understand that like there's always a story. There's always more that kind of brought that person to where they are. So thank you for sharing that for sure.
Yeah, and everyone has a story, right? Just
Yep.
exactly how you said it. And you can see people on the outside, and people will live a social media life where
Yeah.
all you see is their highlight reel. And so you can start comparing yourself on Instagram, Facebook, and think, oh man, Steve just closed a 100-unit deal. I have 15 doors in residential. What am I doing? And then the newbies looking at that person and says, I haven't done a deal yet. And so again, it just all goes back to mindset. And if we compare ourselves to others, tell you that really can lead down a bad path just with hurting your mindset.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And this is why it's so important, I think, to stay grounded, right? Like you not have that commonality, but I know for a lot of people, they're kind of, all right, well, I need to seek significance throughout something, right? And whatever it is. And, that maybe that is through success, through real estate or through business or whatever. But there's always got to be some kind of other deeper motivating, factor there. For us, we have, like I said, a shared belief in God, but I know for a lot of people, like they're not there. So, having to be able to maintain that positive mindset, because I mean, it was exactly right. It's not all rainbows and sunshine, guys. Like we can't always just see, the highlight reel that is on social media posts, right? Like we're very blessed. We've traveled extensively, but for starting out, I never even thought it was possible to own a house. I came from a broken family, and like I said, everybody's got a different story to what got them to where they need to be. So yeah, having that positive mindset, having something that's willing to receive, to learn, to try and better yourself, to get to that point where you say like, okay, I've had enough. I can't do this. Everybody's got to have that. Well, I can't stay here. I've had enough, but something's got to change. And most of us have realized that have had some success, have realized, well, that's the man in the mirror, right? That's the person in the mirror that actually has to have implement that change. So yeah, for sure. Well, I kind of want to switch gears a little bit, get back to kind of deals and real estate a little bit more. I know the market that you're operating in Phoenix, right? You live in Phoenix. We're just talking about sweltering Phoenix heat. I've definitely experienced heat, in the desert Southwest and all that before. But where do you see now? Obviously, with the way that the market's been now for we're a year in. Where do you see kind of in the future going forward? Everybody says a lot of doom and gloom that's been. I feel like a lot of the stuff is kind of rattled out, but I think there's still a general sentiment of uncertainty. Kind of negative outlook, I think, for a lot of people. You hear in the media, of course, like, well, hey, commercial real estate. It's like, well, it's crashing. It's headed for, fall. And, of course, retail is having its challenges and whatnot. But, we'll operate in a little bit different space. But what is your kind of long-term outlook on not only your market specifically, but also for the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I'm always of the ilk is that there's always a deal that can be done. Now I say that take that with a grain of salt, right? You don't just want to do a deal to get into a bad deal, but when the market's really hot, right? Interest rates are 3.5%, and everyone's buy. There's some investors that think, oh, it's going to crash eventually, and so they pull back. And so now, and they say, I want to wait for the next recession. And now we're headed towards that. We're probably on the cusp of that. And deals are, I was pursuing some properties in Oklahoma that were over 70,000 a door, and now they're in the 50s. And people are looking at that now and thinking, oh, we're in a recession. I can't buy. I have to wait for the uptick. And so they always just push it off. And so you just have to take action. There's always going to be opportunity. So that's my mentality. And we want to focus on markets that have great job growth, projected job growth in the next 10 years, landlord friendly states. And so also states that we have connections and with property managers and partners that can help us along with that too. So I do think there are a lot of opportunities on the horizon. Like I mentioned, we were looking at $70,000 per unit in Oklahoma, and now we're in the 50s. So that's already happening. And I actually also looked at a deal where they bought a 201 unit that was for $15 million, and now they're selling it for around 13 and a half. And they're already taking a bath on it, but they're marketing it as that. And that's their asking price. They're asking for a haircut. And so we're starting to see that in the market now. And also, so now that we're seeing this recession period, yeah, you can find more deals, but then the capital is harder to find, right? So there's always a dichotomy in I think anything you do really, but you're going to have gives and takes with whatever you do. And so I'm pretty bullish about the future.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm always quick to remind people, it's like, well, you put everything on a long enough timeline. If you hold hard assets, you win. And so, it's pretty simple kind of when you simplify it down to that level. But too many, you mentioned it too, too many people end up trying to chase the market. And it's like, well, now's the right time, or I'll wait for the market to crash. And it's like, well, then you end up on the sidelines forever. You're never able to time the market. I think people have this false belief where it's like, well, that's the bottom. You can't call it. And who's to say that opportunity will be there? If you are looking at the bottom, like it's just impossible to time. And there's always going to be some kind of constraint. There's always going to be some kind of challenge to overcome, whether it be debt terms, whether it be deal. When the money's cheap, the properties are expensive. And so what's the excuse then, right? Or now, well, the money's more expensive. Okay, well, now the deals are cheaper, but, again, capital is harder to raise. So, there's always going to be some challenge to overcome. So you need to learn to identify the opportunities, see the opportunities, and see, what it is that's available to you in that moment, and solve that problem. I mean, that's ultimately that's what we do, right? We get paid to provide value, to solve problems, and that's where the value is created. So.
Exactly. Yeah, and the bigger problems you solve, the more reward that there is. And also the more people you help, the more returns there are, right? So if you're the cashier and you're just helping one person at a time, or if you're buying a big property with 100 units and you can really impact 100 people's lives in the community, the return is going to be there more.
Yeah, no, and I love that. And that's actually a great, I think a great picture for value creation, right? And I feel like sometimes people have a hard time understanding that. I know, minimum wage and all this kind of stuff was, hot topic or whatever for the last stretch, right? People should be, and I'm definitely not saying that people should make more, but it's always about value creation, right? It's always about, well, how much value do you bring to the marketplace? Because the marketplace will reward you for that, right? More value is created, the more people that you're able to help. Like I said, I think that cashier is a great picture of that. It's like, well, yeah, one person at a time. Glad to give you a smile and help you check out with your groceries and get you on your day. But again, it's one person, one spot for a limited amount of value, right? So, and I love the fact that you made that apparent, where it's like, yeah, it's a 100-unit complex. We can impact the community with that. I love that. I love the idea of that. And it's like, gosh, if you get you have assets under management, hundreds or thousands of units, right? We know people in the space that do in a given market. Gosh, that has a lot of impact on a lot of people, right? So there's this multiplier effect that happens. And so opportunity is there, of course, for value creation, and you're going to get compensated as such, right? So yeah, I love that. That's really good. Well, I know, what are you working on currently? I know, you've got deals on the table, or tell us about, kind of a recent experience, maybe with a deal, good or bad, where, you had a nice takeaway or something with a recent multifamily deal.
Yeah, we do have a couple of deals going on, and what I'll say is the takeaway that I've had lately is, so let's say you're underwriting. That's what I'm doing. I'm on the acquisition side, talking with brokers often, and so looking for that deal, right? That diamond in the rough. You'll get one out of 100 that you underwrite. And so you find that one and the returns are there for the investors and you're the underwriter. So you don't, let's say you don't have the capital to take this down or the net worth. So you have a partner that's going to help you along. And you have that call with your partner and the returns are there, but the return for your partner, the managers isn't that fruitful, right? Maybe they want their takeaway to be a couple $1 million, and that's what they're used to. Now, let's say this deal is a little bit smaller and you just don't have that size of return. It's only $1 million back to the sponsor. And so you can get all the way down this line and but then your sponsor doesn't want to do the deal. And so my takeaway is if you have been building relationships with other people in your sphere that can come alongside you and take down that deal, all of you, just don't put all your eggs in one basket and one sponsor. So continue to network and continue to build relationships, have lunch, have coffee with people and follow up, right? Every 3 months. That's something that I do every day. I'll text 3 people in my phone and just say, hey, I hope you're doing well. I was just thinking about you. How you been? And deals have come through that. Partnerships have come through that. And just really meaningful conversations have come through that too. So that's probably the biggest takeaway that I have lately.
Yeah, no, that's actually really good. And I think initially when I kind of heard that, it's like, well, wait a minute, you're systematizing, your friendships. Like that's cold, and it's like, yeah, but we're humans and everybody, has got a million things going on. I've got 2 kids and, tons of people that I know have families and, jobs and life, that happens. And it's like, look, if you don't have it into some kind of system, it's just going to fall between the cracks. Like best
That's right.
intentions that, doesn't matter. Like it's like, well, hey, look, I want to connect with you, right? And where that leads, like, hey, maybe you just needed that moment. Maybe it's for business, maybe it's personal, whatever. It's not a cold thing to do. It's like, no, this is actually a way to make sure that you're touched, right? Like that you feel valued and that we can kind of have some reciprocal relationship. Really a friendship, right? And so
Yeah,
that's such a great.
absolutely.
No, that's great. That's great. Well, I mean, at this point, like I said, I want to make sure that I'm mindful of your time. So, we transition to the show to what we call like our fire round. So it's basically just a little bit kind of more brief question and answer. Is that something you're game for?
I'm game.
All right. First question: what is the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Oh gosh, I would say 2 real quick. So the Bible, the book of James specifically, that's one of my favorites. And also I'm in sales right now. So The Secrets to Closing a Sale by Zig Ziglar.
Oh yeah, I love Zig. Every time I hear Zig's name, I just can't help but hey, he's got that wonderful Southern drawl.
He does. He's got a personality on him, man. I love it.
I love Zig. All right, next question. What's your superpower?
I'd say, man, that is a really, really good question, Steve. I would say probably listening. Listening to people. I can be an introvert, and so I can, whenever someone wants to talk more, that's fine with me. And so I'd say listening is my superpower.
That's a great superpower, and I feel like not a lot of people fully understand that, right? So or they wouldn't consider that a superpower, but it's definitely a superpower.
Mm.
Very good. All right, next question. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career to this point?
I'd say my biggest lesson is I can be somewhat of an isolationist, meaning that I can pull back from people very easily and just cut them out of my life if I don't think they can provide value, which is wrong, right? I can still learn from anybody. The homeless person on the side of the road to Grant Cardone, millionaire, billionaire, even probably more so from the less fortunate. And so Knowing that, that's honestly an ego thing on my end, and working through that and realizing that is something that I wish I had known earlier on, and I could have saved a lot of relationships and a lot of heartache if I would have just remembered to be open to other people and that I can learn from anybody.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's actually that's a life lesson. And sometimes I feel like that is harder to learn, or it's something that you don't fully experience by somebody just telling you, right? You'll pick that up kind of along the way. There's so much life lesson out there where it's like, I don't need that. But if you just learn to apply it, right, through a mentor or through somebody that's older in your life, whoever, just a little bit further down the road than you, they could shortcut and save you a lot of time. And yeah, no, that's a great lesson. All right, for busy working professional trying to work towards financial freedom, what advice would you have for them?
I would say find a mentor. So find a mentor that has done what you want to do, because that'll do two things. One, teach you what you need to do, right? Because they've done it, so you know that works. And also, for me starting off, it was really important to be able to see someone having what I thought was possible. So it kind of helped me in my belief that, oh, this guy's done it, and I see him, I can touch him. He puts on his pants just like me. And so seeing that it's possible was also really beneficial.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I think that's a challenge, right, for a lot of people. It's like in our society now, where we do have so much access to so much information out there, like it can be a little bit disconnecting, I guess, if you can't like see and touch, right? Like where you don't have that face-to-face interaction with an individual, right? It's like, great, somebody can listen to our podcast and our recording today and be like, okay, yeah, I've got some gems there. But it is something different to see. Yeah, that guy's just a normal guy, just like me, eats sandwiches the same, and, does laundry and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's easy to forget, the day-to-day, mundane stuff. But that's actually really good. And that's actually, I think, comes to like the benefit of networking and being around people who are, of the same ilk or that are headed towards where you want to go. Right. It's like, okay, no, I need to meet you face to face. It's good. Yeah, no, that's great. Well, if our audience wants to get in touch with you, what kind of the best routes, if they want to learn a little bit more about stuff that you've got going on, projects, or, your podcast, what's the best way for them to reach out and get in touch with you? What, socials, website, whatever?
Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity. And what I'd say is they can check us out at redseacapitalgroup.com, or they can check us out, on all social media, our podcast, From Trial to Triumph, and check us out there.
Awesome. Well, Caleb, hey, thanks so much for jumping on with me today, sharing a little bit of your time with me. Time's super valuable, so I really appreciate that, and our audience has too. So go out and take some more action. I wish you the best on your deals. I know that you guys got some great projects that you guys are working on. So kudos to you on that. And we'll have to.
Pleasure was all mine, brother. Really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, guys. So that's going to be it for us today. We'll be signing off, and we'll talk to you next time. Aloha. Oh, great show, great recording, great chatting with Caleb Johnson over with Red Sea Capital. Make sure you're checking out his podcast, From Trial to Triumph. I know he's got other inspirational guests that they have on there sharing, what it takes to go through, the trials of everyday life and come out triumphant. And I'm definitely going to go check out the show, give a listen to some of that. He's also a great model of success for being so young. I think it's great that he shared, a lot of times it does take something significant in our lives to be able to serve as a wake-up call. For him, it sounded like it was pretty motivating to him to see his mom kind of go through some health challenges that served as his wake-up call to be able to make a difference in his life. I know a lot of you, may have something similar, or just to know how much economic volatility we've had in the world, and just daily life now. It's like, well, look, you've got to work harder than ever, work smarter than ever to make sure that you guys are taken care of long term, that your retirement is set in place, that you're not going to be struggling to make ends meet, whenever it comes time to to hang up your W-2 or whatever. If you just want to live a better life, higher quality life, or I've got kids, so I think about my kids frequently and the things that we're doing. So, but yeah, pleasure to have him on the show. Make sure you guys are checking out him over at Red Sea Capital. Well, guys, if you're interested in investing with us, of course, go to tricityequity.com. You can learn more about our team, our track record, and different things about our group. We've got some exciting things going on right now. So, we've got deals on the table. We've always got opportunities coming and going, and we'd love to just share, our learning experience along with the rest of you guys. So, if you're local to Honolulu, we also have our monthly meetup. With that, we actually have one coming up. So make sure that you're touching base with us on Facebook, Honolulu Multifamily and more. You can also find us on meetup.com if you're there locally in Honolulu. So make sure that you check us out. And also, too, if you guys are finding value in the podcast, we want to make sure we want your feedback, honestly. So if there's things that you think we can do better or some guests that you'd like to see us have on the show, make sure that you're leaving some comments for us wherever it is that you're listening to us, whether that be on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you're finding us. We'd love your, a review from you. Love a 5-star one, but of course, if you love the show, if you hate the show, let us know that too. But of course, make sure that you're sharing the show if you found value. All right, guys. Well, that's going to be it for us today. We will catch you on the next episode. Go out and take some action, and we'll talk to you soon. Aloha.